Greetings from the Hypnotic World Epicenter, Toronto, Canada. You are listening to the Brain Software Podcast. This is episode 216, and I'm Chris Thompson. Today, hypnosis and NLP trainer Mike Mandel and I are going to discuss mesmerism and hypnosis tools to blow people's minds. So stay tuned, and it's not what you think.
Disclaimer. We want all of our viewers and listeners to know that Mike Mandel Hypnosis, despite whatever you might have heard, is in no way connected with St. Michael's College, University of Toronto, and at no time have we or any of our employees broken into Charbonnel Lounge under the cover of darkness, slipped past the security desk in order to steal our own equipment, which was supposedly secure in the storage room. Lucci.
Hey, Scro. Great to be here, dude. Last night I went out for a high-end supper in Toronto and the food was great. Best of all, I really like the way they give you a glass of water with your meal without you having to ask for it, man. Where I come from, you gotta ask him for it. I get so effing thirsty, I have to shout to the waiter, "Can I get a glass of water over here, Scro? I'm starting to panic." But whatever happened to that old Tesseract four-dimensional hypercube we used to slip through in order to shop for batarangs and tin saxophones?
We are not witches! So let's welcome to Tin Saxophone Kazoo Land, the smartest kid to escape Earl B. Public School. The boy who skipped grade 4 and then failed grades 9 and 11. And the Keith Richards of hypnosis, Mike Mandel, everybody.
Yes, I named my neck with that, pushing the spinous processes together for you chiropractors in the audience, but it was worth it. Man, we got a good one. Got a good show
pleased.
today.
I think we're probably a little over a year into doing these as video podcasts.
Yeah.
And we've somehow now mastered, finally, the idea of actually speaking into the microphone. Because when they were audio only, we didn't have to balance the whole camera. Anyway, all is good.
Oh, wait, better than the early days when we had a blue snowball in a cardboard box.
we'd
We both
lean
had to
over it.
lean into it.
Not a
take
cardboard
turns.
box.
Well,
but
all
yeah,
right.
we used to use one microphone.
So
and
we're
lean
talking
into it.
about mesmerism today, the rise of mesmerism.
Yes.
We're going to discuss that. We're not taking shots at anyone. We're just going to look at this from our perspective. We're not going to name anyone.
Of course.
And-
Well, we will. We will
Right.
name some
but
people.
Also, man, cool hypnosis stuff. We have just completed Architecture of Hypnosis.
Oh my goodness, buddy. 3 years of not teaching the architecture of hypnosis anywhere. We only taught it in Toronto historically, but 3 years of stuff going on in the world. And
Yeah.
now things are essentially acceptably normal, mostly. And we had amazing students.
Well, yeah, we had two students from India who didn't know each other. They
Yeah.
both came over. One was a psychologist, lovely woman. We also had a
few
woman
from the
from
UK,
Denmark
from
who was
Denmark,
totally
from
into it. We had a man
Israel.
from Israel.
Yeah.
UK, lots from the UK. Well, maybe three or something.
At least 2 or 3.
Yeah, two chiropractors in the class.
Really
and
awesome.
A psychologist, and also a lot from the
Such
US.
a wonder. And actually, I don't know if this podcast will go deep into it or not, but I think in the next one we were talking about everyday people and how you can use hypnosis in different careers, right? Whether we'll get into that or not today, I'm not sure. But
We'll
there was
see.
a really wide mix of people with all kinds of different professions or just general interests. And that's the cool thing about hypnosis, because it's simply a method of communicating with people. You can do it informally, you can do it formally to help people change. It's a really wonderful experience to have all these different people come together and have an epic freaking blast.
Well, you're right, man. And also the fact that it does appeal to a wide variety of people across the spectrum of jobs and careers and stuff. We had 2 blacksmiths in the class who didn't know each other. I mean, how unlikely is that?
John was one.
And
Who was
Ben
the
is a
other?
blacksmith.
Oh, no
He made
kidding.
me my amazing chef's knife.
I didn't know
It's
Ben
like
was...
a $500 chef's
Okay,
knife. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool.
Smart kid.
Very cool.
So, okay.
Yeah, good student, too.
Let's go right away to our... We're going to try to keep this tight.
Oh, think tank words and then the actual topic.
Yes,
So we're
sir.
going to power through the think tank words, which
Yes,
we
sir, Mr.
only
Arafat.
use to fire our reticular activating system so
And
that
then
we
fire
can-
our friends.
You fire- and sometimes, as we'll discuss
Keep
soon,
talking, I'm drinking
sometimes you fire your customers. That'll be
Oh,
more about
man.
that later. Okay, let's do the words. So
okay.
I'll just read them, and then this time
Yeah.
I'll read them and you talk about them.
Got it.
Buttermilk, Geostatics, and Panorama.
Well, the first thing I think with Buttermilk was a hilarious line that I'm not able to repeat on this, but it was in the book Portnoy's Complaint about buttermilk and Clorox.
Oh.
So we'll talk about that off camera later.
What I think
if you say that to Michael C. Anthony, he'll, I said Anthony. You say it to Michael C. Anthony, he'll start laughing his butt off just right
buttermilk
away.
and Clorox. So everybody should email Michael C. Anthony. No, I'm kidding. Don't
do it.
But buttermilk and Clorox. I'm thinking about buttermilk. It sounded, when I was a kid and I heard buttermilk, I thought, oh, that sounds really appealing. Butter, it's soft.
It tastes horrible.
And milk. And so I think my mom at some point bought buttermilk for like a 1 liter container, for
so you
a
could
recipe.
just drink it.
And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to try some of this. And it was
It's salty and thin and weird.
So when I think of buttermilk, I think something that seemed appealing until I tried it and realized it was horrible.
I know.
So I don't know where that'll fit. What about geostatics?
Well, I don't even know what buttermilk. How's it going to fit with hypnosis?
We're going to skip it.
Make people drink buttermilk and tell them it's fine wine or something. All these dicks in the early days used to do that. And actually, in George Estabrook's book, he talks about telling people under hypnosis to drink turpentine and telling them it's wine.
Yeah, what the hell?
And I Googled it.
And that actually happened, right?
Well, yeah, they do this. It'll kill you. It can kill you.
And if it doesn't kill you, it certainly won't help you. And still will probably kill you.
Yes,
not a good
won't
idea.
help you in case
This is just as dumb as putting people across chairs, cataleptic, and standing on them in a stage hypnosis show.
Until I read that Erickson said it causes permanent. Causes back
you
injuries.
did it until you realized that it's dickish.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dickish, dangerous. Anyway, so geostatics. I also think about just geo meaning your location, static meaning same, meaning are you staying the same or are you moving?
Oh, that's clever.
Maybe you want to go somewhere else. And I don't necessarily mean physical location, but where do you want to go in life, right?
Wow,
so let's
that's
think about
interesting.
That. What about panorama?
Well, I haven't enjoyed geostatics to the full yet, and you're already jumping to panorama.
Oh, yeah, because we're
Jack
running
the
out of time.
freaking panorama
Look at the
jumper.
clock.
I'm not looking at that.
I'm just kidding.
You're going to have to tell me. But geostatics, yeah. So staying in one place, of course, we're looking at it geographically, physically, but of course it's, in your life as well. Are you static in this world?
Yeah.
As it were.
Yes, 100%.
In this world.
In this
I'll do the Paul
world.
Moyer way.
Can you do it?
No, you do one finger. Are you static in this world?
You got to watch
one
the video.
One finger, do both.
If you're listening to the audio, you got to come to
What
YouTube.
about panorama?
Okay, panorama. Here's what it makes me think. The opposite of panorama to me would be a zoomed in, like macro lens, looking at something really, really close. Panorama is sort of, hey, open your eyes, look around. There's a lot more going on.
That's
but
good.
sometimes you need to zoom in. Sometimes you need the big wide angle view.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and we're looking at big chunk and small chunk from NLP as well. So you're chunking up to the big picture. I'm a huge picture guy.
All right.
And my wife is very fine detail. So let's find a way of making all this fit. Drinking buttermilk, where you're stuck in this world, and how it will open a new panorama and a new vista for you. Let's talk.
All right. Now we're going to go.
About John.
Let's go straight into content because
John is content.
No, it's not. It's not training. I want to talk. Let's do the hypnosis, mesmerism, Mandel triangle, all these discussions.
No, buddy,
we'll
we can't. I'm going to take umbrage to that
You've
today.
sold me on it.
We're going to go with this. It's going to be quick.
Okay, we'll
but
make it quick.
This is all the preamble, and then we get into the meat.
This is like a new category we're calling the customer's not always right. And honestly, I was thinking about that today after I did my workout and had my shower, and I'm going, I could just imagine the voice. Hi, I'm Dave Shizchik, and the customer's not always right.
Hardly ever, in fact, yeah.
So here's the situation. We've always talked in this podcast about the need to make sure you associate with good quality people in your life. And sometimes friends turn out to be not so great friends, and you have to fire them from your life, or maybe you have a bad boss, or whatever the case is. You want to be around high quality people. Now, as business owners, we say the same thing about our customers. We want good quality customers who are not dicks. Some of them, very few are, but we sell so much stuff, I guess, on a daily basis that just through the law of large numbers, you're eventually going to come across. So if it sounds like we've always got something to say about a customer in this podcast, I guess it's because
there's so many of them, but most of them are
so
great.
Here's the story. This is what actually happened. Here, deck of cards as a prop.
Nice.
We had a customer, John, in 2021. He bought a deck of these cards, and they were sent to him in the United States. I'm not using his last name, of course.
No, of course
John
not.
is generic enough. John got the cards, really liked them. I think he signed up for MMHA for a couple of months and then canceled. That's fine, no big deal.
No problem.
Here's what happened. He got the cards, he liked the cards. A year later, so last October, a month ago, he ordered another deck of cards because he liked them so much. So, of course, they arrived in his mailbox. As soon as they arrived, he emailed support and said, I'd like to request a refund because I already have a deck. And then I think customer support sent something like, wait a second, yeah, you already bought them, but why are you return like? Are you unhappy? What's the deal? I said, oh no, I'm perfectly happy with them. I realized that there's a refund policy and that you say that you can ask for a refund for any reason at all, and I don't even have to send them back. So customer service sends me this and says, this is highly unusual. So I thought, wonderful, I'm going to get a chance to respond to John myself. And I said, hi, John, I understand, and I laid out the order of events that you bought the cards, you bought them again, you're happy, and now you're asking for refund simply because you can. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think I said in my first email, this feels a bit unethical.
Yeah.
Well, duh. He goes, well, what you consider unethical, I think of as being business savvy.
Yeah. And so you said, I'd like you to send me a card. I'd like you to send me the cards. I like the cards. I'd like you to send me a deck. And I hear that as, I have the cards.
I like them.
And I'm actually a dick.
But because you have a refund policy, I'm just going to ask for. So here's what I said, John, I'd be happy to give you a full refund.
Yeah.
And in the process, I'm going to invite you to never do business with us again.
Invite you to not do something.
He got very upset.
Yeah.
He accused me. This is the thing. He did the mind reading thing of saying, I don't know why Chris is so upset. He complained to customer support. Okay, John, I'm not upset. I'm laughing at how over a $9 purchase, you destroyed your opportunity to ever communicate with us, to ever do business with us again, to ever train with us. It was kind of a dumb decision.
Yeah.
So I'm not upset with you. Enjoy your free deck of cards or give them to a friend if you want. And I guess, maybe enjoy our podcast and the free stuff, but you can't.
Well,
you're fired, John.
It's
fired.
ridiculous. And you are at this point in the podcast where I would typically do the dick chant now, but we're not going to do that. We're so mature.
Let's just skip it.
No. We're going to let Chris do the dick chant today because you were the one who had to deal with him. So, John, this is for you, buddy.
Dick.
Take your time. You're rushing it.
Dick.
Brilliant. That's a 10 out of 10.
All right. So there's your dick chant.
All right. So let's get to mesmerism and magnetism.
The customer's not always right. Not everyone is always right. And you get to decide in your own life who you associate with. We don't associate with dicks. How's that? All right.
I like it. It was very good. So very good. Very strong.
Most of our customers, like 99+%, awesome.
Right, moving forward now.
All right.
Mesmerism and magnetism are making a comeback.
Speaking of, all right, let's talk about this.
We've seen people are saying things like, if you're not doing mesmerism, you're not doing the complete field of hypnosis. This to me is essentially like going to the hospital, the emergency ward, and they stick leeches on you. Now,
you haven't learned about the importance of leech contact,
well,
Mike.
there are areas they do use leeches again, maybe, which is horrible. But people don't understand. Mesmerism is something we escaped from as hypnotists. And so I've watched a bunch of videos on it, read a bunch of stuff online. And
people who are practicing it in this day and age. Right?
Yeah. Magnetic passes.
Do you want to give a very brief history of how Mesmer became Mesmer?
I would be delighted, Chris.
I think it's worth the 1 minute on this.
Yeah, about 1774, I believe. Mesmer started his practice. He was learning magnetic currents in the body. He studied with Father Hell, who was a Jesuit priest. And, he'd pass his hands over and stop bleeding and everything. He went on.
They actually used magnets.
They used magnets back then. Lodestone, magnetite.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have his lodestones one day, and he opened an artery or a vein. They did that for everything.
Because they thought bloodletting was the way to
you had a sanguine
your
humor
illness.
that was too much. They had to get it out of your system. Passes his a wooden stick, a pointer from the blackboard over the person's wrist because he didn't have his magnets. The bleeding stops. So you get platelet aggregation. Clot forms. Mesmer thinks he's got magnetic powers. Goes on to develop this, becomes a freaking mesmeric rock star in Paris at this time. Anybody who was anybody went to Mesmer to be cured. He had his seances. He'd show up in robes and a turban and a wand and have music playing, burning incense. And you got so much prestige happening. People sitting around a baquette full of iron filings, holding onto rods and wine bottles, and they do the funky chicken and often get better because if your disease is psychogenic, you can get rid of it with suggestion as well as indirect suggestion here. Mesmer is eventually examined by a royal commission, and they determined under Benjamin Franklin, the American scientist and statesman and Freemason, he said, no, this is nonsensical. They said, basically, to put it in English, we see no evidence of any magnetic fluids. Now, basically, to be fair, they didn't check Mesmer. They checked his colleagues and his students. They said, we think this is just imagination.
Pretty sure Mesmer didn't have special magnetic powers either, though.
Because he would magnetize trees, because people who needed to see him couldn't all get in, much like today's emergency rooms. A 45-hour wait in Toronto now. 45-hour today in the news. So sometimes people would go to the
Canada
wrong
is free
tree.
healthcare.
They go to the wrong tree.
And it would still
they
fix
still
them.
do the funky chicken and twitch and have convulsions and go on like this. And they say, oh, he's okay, he's waving.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
Now, there is a longer history of this. Of course, you tell it in the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy.
Right,
I think
right.
it might be part of
this
your
is enough,
keynote.
but except for one other aspect. So he was discredited. James Esdaile in Mesmerism in India wrote about the 300 serious operations they did. British Army surgeon in Calcutta. He was removing tumors and things, and large testicular tumors,
Bad stuff.
blood flow, and amazing surgery that none of these modern people who are reviving mesmerism are doing. I mean, no one's done anything to the degree he was doing it, and it would take 2 hours to get them in trance. But Esdaile himself could not get it to work in London, where people didn't believe in it.
Right.
Which to
So-
me is selling it as suggestion. And my final point is this.
Thank you.
John Elliotson, British doctor, one of the most important doctors in London, totally believed in mesmerism. And here's what happens when someone believes their own hype too much. Elliotson was doing all sorts of mesmerism, mostly with two women, the OK sisters. And they deceived him, and he thought they had all these powers, and he had these powers. And other people could see that it was nonsensical, but he was so intent on believing it that he never, ever got away from it.
So was he suffering from Kripkean dogmatism?
I think he might have
There we
been.
go.
Saul Kripke,
That's a phrase we haven't used for a few years
go ahead,
on
explain
this podcast.
Kripkean dogmatism.
Well, Kripke explained this dogmatic approach where if you put on a filter such that anything that contradicts your perception of reality, you dismiss it as not real. So you're only accepting observations and information and data that supports your belief and dismissing everything else. Now, are we doing that? Well, let's talk about this for a moment. So we often talk about Mesmer. Mesmer did contribute something to the field of hypnosis,
Prestige.
but he did not contribute
Anything to the science.
Exactly. So from the scientific perspective, the explanation being, oh, this is magnetic fluids or currents or whatever the heck he's claiming about magnetism. And we're saying, at least nobody has ever proven it has anything to do with any of that. So calling it magnetic passes and magnetic anything just seems nonsense to me. So what is valid, the prestige part, and how does that tie in when we chunk up to what real hypnosis is? How real hypnosis is taught?
Back up a
Let's
bit
talk
for a
about
sec.
that.
Remember, there have been numerous attempts to try to revive it. Even after Braid brought in his whole fascination approach, eye fixation for doing hypnosis, Charcot was determined still in Salpêtrière, Paris, at the hospital. He was still determined to use magnetic currents and tried to revive mesmerism, mostly with young women.
And he might get he would have definitely gotten results, because if you work with someone who believes that this is happening, what's happening in their brain? They have a focused attention on it, and an expectation, right?
And it was Dr. Krasner said, when you combine belief and expectation, you get hypnosis. Now, so I watched some of the video stuff online, a couple of videos. Nothing remotely convinced me that anything was going on other than prestige hypnosis. When you watch these videos, people making magnetic passes, oh, but her eyes are closed, she still responds. Well, if you look, you'll see the shadow of his hands is going over her eyes. She knows what's happening. You'll hear him breathing. You can hear breathing shifts. If somebody has seen it before, they know how to respond. And so there's presuppositions. Who knows what the pre-talk is? Has the person been exposed to seeing any of it before where they know how to respond? And if the operator thoroughly believes this, they're going to be extending a very high degree of congruence with it, and prestige is happening. I've not seen, bottom line, I've not seen anything that has convinced me that anything other than hypnosis is happening. And the problem is, this begins to spin off into other areas like, oh, well, mesmerism is the missing ingredient, and it's tied to quantum physics. Now, Chris and I have both done college-level training in quantum mechanics, and I can tell you this is nothing whatever to do with quantum physics as physicists teach it. It's the new agey sort of, oh, it's all quantum mechanics.
It's similar to how when someone describes magnetic flow, and then we ask, well, what do you mean by that? And they don't actually mean the physics definition of magnetism, which is like, well, then why the hell are you calling it that, right?
Well,
call it something else. Label your terms, identify your terms, know your definitions.
Borrowing from quantum physics, the mesmerist, the magnetist, and the subject enter a quantum relationship of quantum entanglement. Well, you clearly don't understand quantum entanglement if that's what you're saying to prove your point. Check with Professor Schumacher. He agrees with us. He's a frickin' quantum physicist. Let's not appeal to words that the average deck goes, oh, it's quantum mechanics. I got to learn mesmerism now.
I took that whole course. I don't understand quantum entanglement.
Well, they say, yeah, and if you're not baffled by it, you haven't understood it.
So
You're
anyone who
freaked out
hasn't
by it.
taken the course and explain... Anyway, here's what we're saying. While Mesmer brought nothing of scientific
value,
importance,
yeah.
what he did do is demonstrate quite clearly the importance of prestige and the importance of expectation. So let's say in these mesmerism demonstrations with all the hand-waving and passes and referring to magnetism, whatever the pre-frame is, kind of irrelevant. If you can accomplish the exact same thing through any other hypnotic technique,
yeah, how is it different?
how is it better, different, etc.? It's don't explain it to people with nonsense science like, oh well, these you have
junk
to do
science.
the passes. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
downwards
whacking my
and-
microphone. Yeah. Anyway, enough about that.
No, it isn't enough about it because there's
Okay.
still a couple
Let's
more.
go on for a
there's
lot
a couple
longer.
more points here. Does it mean you have to believe in it for it to work? If I bring in a completely unprepared person who's never heard of it, never experienced hypnosis, and I sit there for the whole thing, your pre-talk and watch the whole thing, what's going to happen? Are they going to do the funky chicken? Are they going to go into a trance like Victor Race did when Pisagor worked with him?
They would
And they
only
even invoke
do-
Pisagor and say, oh, you know, he developed this different kind of
They will
mesmeric
only
trance.
do what
I
they
don't buy it.
believe they should do.
Now,
Otherwise, they would just go into a internal focused state of awareness, and for sure they'll go into trance, but there's no suggestion happening.
No, but buddy,
so
here's
unless there's pre-framing.
final
yeah.
point, and we talk all the time about pacing and leading, okay?
Yes.
And I watched one of the videos, and we're not naming anybody. We've nothing against the people. I'm sure they're good people. My point was they can believe in it just as much as John Elliotson believed in what he was doing in England and still be 100% wrong. I've
There
seen
you
nothing
go.
to convince me, but the one woman, and the guy's doing the passes, and then her arm, you know, goes like this, and people are saying, oh, did you see her arm move in response to pass? Now, is he leading or is he pacing her? Is he moving as she moves?
Well, exactly. That's a very good point. There's an
course it
assumption that there's a cause-effect loop by most viewers, when in reality, it's a psychodynamic loop, and they're both in rapport with each other in some way.
Right.
And there is calibration happening. If you've got your eyes closed and someone's passing their hands in front of you,
Feel breeze.
you will feel a breeze, and you will notice
the
lighting
shadows.
changes.
Yeah.
And you could possibly you'll hear things. You still have a sense of hearing for their breathing or just generally moving in a chair or whatever. You'll be able to tell through. The human calibration system is so freaking complex.
It
right?
is.
Like we consider it intuition, but really it's I could tell that there was a creaking sound and the shadow got more intense and I felt airflow. Therefore, my unconscious mind automatically concludes, oh, there's this happening.
Yeah, I remember
Can't see it, but you know
the
what's
other day
happening.
our discussion with someone said, well, it's a spiritual thing. And I immediately
What
said,
does that mean?
You have to define your terms. What exactly do you mean by that? Get people to define their terms. Anyway, all is to say, God bless them, the people doing this. We're not opposed to you. We're not taking shots at you. All we're saying is we are unconvinced. Completely so far. So let's talk about some of these other amazing skill sets, like
The Esdaile state? You want to talk about that?
yeah.
now?
Let's talk about the Esdaile state.
I think this would be a fun one because we haven't taught the architecture of hypnosis in 3 years except for last week, and it was amazing. We got back, and on the final day, so we build people up, right? So just to give a little, this isn't really a sales pitch, so I mean you can treat it that
Yeah,
way.
it
And
is.
registration is open for the architecture of hypnosis.
Thanks
We've
again.
already signed the contract for
Some
the
people are
May
booked, they got their
hotel
flights, no
space.
kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Done.
Well, you love how you always talk over me while I'm actually doing the
doing
fake
things for the
pitch. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so we build people up. We start with the Ericksonian language pattern stuff. We start with simple inductions based on catalepsy. Then we build towards the direct model. We teach the Elman induction, which is a great way to get people into somnambulistic trance in like 4 minutes or less. We teach people deepeners and all these amazing interventions. And then on the final day, you demonstrate by teaching them how to use the Elman induction to get people to the Esdaile state, and then they go and do it on each other. So about half the class does it, the other half the class receives it, let's say.
Yeah.
And usually of the half that's playing the role of the hypnotic subject, maybe half of them will typically
maybe
get
40,
because they've been
45%.
going into trance all week long. So they're really anchored to be going. They've had a lot of practice going into trance. They are working with people who understand the Elman induction and therefore and the escalator deepeners and all that stuff.
Right.
And they get to Esdaile. Now here is the cool part. You in the demo, and maybe we'll throw some B-roll in here during
That'd be interesting.
during the edit. We'll see, Ross, if we get you that video, you can B-roll this in. But generally what happens is you'll have someone in Esdaile, then you'll set up unsuggested catalepsy.
For tests.
Yeah, you will set it up. But at one point in the testing process...
First test.
Yeah, first test is for anesthesia, general anesthesia that's unsuggested, and you'll reef on their radial nerve, and they won't respond. Now, to the observers, even to the subject, if they haven't had this done to them before, they don't know what it should feel like. So it's actually not that convincing.
Right. There's no saying, oh, you feel nothing. You feel nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
In the beginning, they don't know what it should feel like. So when we do it as a test, it's really just for our benefit. We go, oh, yeah, okay, they passed that test. Then when they come out of it and we do it again, we say, well, this is what happened. And every single time, what do? They go, ow!
Yeah.
They can't believe how much it hurts because it is pretty
And with
nasty.
Lisa in the demo, I didn't do it that hard on her afterwards.
Yeah.
But during, I mean, you can see.
I watched you. I was
Yeah.
filming it because I was watching you reefing on that nerve,
Yeah.
strumming it like a guitar string.
Like Jack
right?
the freaking guitar strummer.
And
yeah.
then afterwards, you usually do it about half the intensity. And they go, oh, geez, that really hurts. And then we teach our students how to do the same thing and how to test it and how to demonstrate after the fact. My point in all of this is it tends to be an amazing convincer of the power of hypnosis for people who've never really experienced it.
For sure, Chris. And of course, people can come back and say, well, you're just doing what you're saying the Mesmerists are doing. You're pre-framing what's going to happen and all. But let me answer this.
Yeah.
The very first time I did it was in Derek Bomber's class, and nobody knew what I was going to do, and it worked.
Yeah, and there is certainly an element that if you pre-frame to someone that they won't feel pain,
You're getting
that
expectation.
They won't.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you were teaching it and if you said what was going to happen or not, but it doesn't matter because Lisa already knew she'd been in this state before.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, okay, you don't have to suggest this, and you get pain relief simply through the deep relaxation alone, right? You explain it scientifically as the brush endings
of the nerves
start to
move further
separate.
apart.
You get
Yeah.
distance separation, and that attenuates pain, the signal, massively. So what happens is all these people in hypnosis, in any way that you set up hypnosis, but doing Esdaile, you're going to get the deepest, the coma, the hypnotic coma.
Oh, gosh.
And they get an amazing result, and that's usually a really cool convincer for a lot of people. So that's always fun on the last day.
But it's a great thing, and a lot of people experienced it and had a blast with it, with the full body catalepsy and all of these things. What about we also did the clench induction, which is such a great induction, if I may say so myself.
The clench induction is another really cool convincer for people because what happened. Now, do you want to explain how you discovered this as a child? You know, there was always games we could play around squeezing. And then
okay, that sounds awesome.
It becomes weird to unlock your hand after, like when you compress really tightly, then when you think you're relaxed, you're still not totally relaxed, and it's weird. It's sort of like when you lean up against a wall and you push your arm.
Yeah, it's the agonist muscles. I think when you contract tightly on something and hold it, you get fatigue in the hand, and you also get tetany forming, like the hand locks in that position, especially if you gently touch
the ambiguous
touch,
and the suggestion.
So doing
and
this as kids, like focus on your hand locks. So I use that to create an induction because they're getting a response that then increases the heteroaction and so on.
Exactly. And so what happens is you're taking something that is a classic childhood trick.
Yeah.
And building in hypnotic elements, which turns it into actual hypnosis. And I didn't know the clench induction. I'll tell you this story very quickly.
All right.
This is the first time that I ever hypnotized somebody very direct. Well, I used Ericksonian tools, but I intended to go in to hypnotize him. And I hadn't disclosed that I was going to. In fact, I didn't even know I was going to until I started doing it. And here's what we started with. I was just showing off a cool little thing that we used to do as kids. I had him lie down, stomach down on the ground, arms outstretched.
I wonder where this is going.
I took a hold of his wrists and raised him. So, like, imagine you're doing a hyperextension.
You're lifting him up? He's face down.
He's face down on the ground, stomach down, arms outstretched. I stand where his arms are. I grab hold of his wrist and just lift them off the ground. So he's sort of arcing his back up. He's just relaxed. You hold the person there for 30 or 40 seconds, maybe a minute at most. And you're not like stretching them in a crazy way to break their back or something. It's just you want them relaxed in that position with their eyes closed. Okay. So their body is calibrating, I'm relaxed, and the calibration, it feels like you're lying flat even though you're not. So when you lower the person slowly back to the ground,
it feels like their arms sink through.
It feels like they're sinking into the ground.
Okay.
It's a really cool kinesthetic sensation.
Now, I've never seen it done that way. I've seen it done lying on your back, eyes closed, raise your arms up overhead, and slowly bring them down, and they feel like they sink deeper and deeper into the floor. Yeah,
all of those things, same idea.
It's mesmerism.
So the idea being so I'm just demonstrating on camera. If the person here is lying face down, you're lifting them up a bit, holding them, and you're just coaching them along. Just relax. That's right. We're just going to wait here. Just totally relax. Just be limp, loose, and comfortable. And in a moment, I'm going to begin to lower you down. That's right. I'm adding in some hypnotic language. I didn't know to do that as a kid. And does it feel like you're sinking into the ground? They go, oh my God, because they're like this, flat for those of audio, but they feel like they're down here in the ground. So all I did is start pacing and leading in that moment. And I offered pacing statements like, and it's a simple thing to notice that sensation of feeling like you're safely below the surface and your arms are outstretched. And it might even be interesting to use your fingers. And I started suggesting how you can feel around and notice the texture and the coolness of the earth. And surprise yourself at how interesting it is that you're still able to breathe perfectly because you know this is just in your imagination. And I started drawing him into this hypnotic loop of pacing and leading, and I noticed the idiomotor movements. When I suggest he could feel the texture, I see his fingers do this. And I go, and you can even hear the sounds of earthworms moving nearby.
All right, let's get back to the clench induction.
Anyway, I segued that into an amazing trance and had him doing crazy
Earthworms
things.
Is a nice touch.
Yeah, it was weird. And I had never done this before. I was about 19 years old, 20 years old, something like that. I didn't know what I was doing, except I'd watch you do stage hypnosis, and I'd learned enough Elliotson hypnosis from reading. I thought, I'm going to try this out, and it worked. So the point being, when you take a neat exercise like something that involves fist squeezing, and then you turn that into an induction with hand locking.
Right.
You're
creating some kind of phenomena
that was already a cool little fun game and making it hypnosis.
Right. There is a very good map across. I agree with you 100%. What makes the clench inductions work so well, I said inductions, induction works so well, is you've got built-in eye focus. You're saying to stare at your hand.
Yes.
So that's the same. We're back to Braid's eye focus. The catalepsy is built in. You're getting a cataleptic limb, which can be used for trance right away. You're also getting a convincer, which ratifies the trance because when they come out, it's been so hard to open. You're getting a therapeutic effect because we have this holding the problem, and the problem is attempting to keep their hand locked shut.
Right.
And they're opening. There's various ways of approaching
tying
it.
the framing of the problem in the person's life, which, by the way, can be done content-free.
Sure.
Which is always nice. If you know that they have a specific problem, you can address it and label it, or you can just call it that issue, that problem, and you're tying it to the idea, the psychological idea that they're holding it in their hand.
Yeah.
And only as quickly as those resources
That's the installation now.
Right.
That's the installation. And it's a false awakening, which I find enjoyable. They feel
'cause
like
you can have
they're
them
staring.
open their eyes
and we did have
stare at
one
their
student, we
hands.
won't say his name, but he was a pain management doctor, he came to Toronto. He was working on a problem years ago when we were still at a different location, and he couldn't open his eyes he opened his eyes staring at the hand, and his eyes were fixed, and it took him nearly half an hour.
Yeah.
And his tears streaming down his
before.
face. Yeah. So it's a very, very powerful thing. Now, what about, I'm just looking at the time here, Chris.
I was thinking we got to go to a break.
We have to go to a special report
and
here.
then let's come back and we'll close up with the,
good.
we'll discuss the handshake interrupt induction.
Yeah.
Right after this break, we have a special report from Hypno North, Meaford, Ontario.
Yeah, how are you tonight? Thanks again. So, I want to give you an update about all the chike that's going on up here in the land, a total waste of time. So, the other day I was out rubbing out coffee and I felt like I needed the Canadian maple donut for breakfast, maybe a Boston cream donut too. So, I figured I'd drive up to Owen Sound and grab a large coffee double-double and then head back into Meaford and maybe do some street hypnosis to practice up over at Fred Raper Park, which is an unfortunate name for a public place in anyone's estimation. But the snow's only about a foot deep there and pretty soft, so it's a good place to do some rapid inductions and let people drop to the ground in complete comfort and safety and that. So I got the coffee and a dozen Boston cream donuts at Tim Hortons because, of course, they're out of the Canadian maple and that, because those dicks, Eddard and Duder, eat about 60 of them a week each and then actually have the temerity to wonder why their stupid jagged teeth are rotting out of their heads. So I headed to the park. There was nobody there and that, so I was feeling kind of down like Holden Caulfield in The Catcher in the Rye when he gets kicked out of Pensy Prep School over Christmas vacation and he left late at night and yelled, "Sleep tight, you morons," and then slipped and nearly fell down the stairs. So I just went back to my place and then realized I spent the last of my cash at Tim's. So now there's no more protection money for Eddard and Duder. And then the knock on the door came. So I was going to have to think fast or listen to their latest get-rich-quick scheme. So I shut off the lights and that and hid in the basement. And that's where I am now, speaking to you on the iPhone 5. So that's the pathetic state of hypnosis up here in the land of perpetual winter. And this is your old pal Barredo saying thanks once again and good night. And if you've never read The Catcher in the Rye, it's a pretty good book and all that. Although Maurice the bellhop was a real bastard and Mr. Antolini was weird. So if you're thinking of trying to get through it and that, just do the best you can. That's all you can really ask of anyone.
Thanks to Brado, we always love those special reports from Meaford, Ontario. Okay, Mike, let's
The
wrap up.
handshake interrupt.
Yeah. Oh, I was interrupted about the handshake interrupt. I love it. How meta. Let's talk about the handshake interrupt and introduce the idea that, first of all, it was really fun. We got to hang out with Anthony and Freddie Jacquin in Toronto a few years back.
Yeah,
and
great
we
guys, great
because
guys.
we didn't know Anthony back when we watched some of his YouTube videos that were amazing and hilarious with, people thinking that giant cucumbers were giant blunts or whatever the kids call them these days, and all those hilarious things that Jacquin did. And I think you asked him. You said, "Hey, when you did that thing where the waiter thought you were Denzel Washington,
bartender, yeah,
explain the setup. And what did he tell you?"
He said, I did the handshake interrupt. I'd never done it before in my life, and he got the bartender on video to believe that Anthony Jacquin was his favorite actor, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "Yes, you're Denzel Washington."
After when he snapped him out of the eyes closed state while hypnotized, he said, "Do you know who I am?" or something like that. And the guy goes, "Yeah, you're Denzel Washington." And then he had him behind the bar. He got his own drinks, and I'm sure he paid for them after the fact. Right?
I don't know,
but really funny, and it's something that we teach in the architecture of hypnosis.
We do.
Usually on day 2.
And we used to teach it as the Milton H. Erickson handshake, interrupt, rapid induction based on a tote, test, operate, test, exit from cybernetic theory. But I've since discovered it was Ralph Slater, who was a stage hypnotist in the 1940s, who developed the handshake interrupt first. And Erickson would have no doubt known about this because he was doing hypnosis from the 1920s on.
Yeah, and he probably would have loved the idea because it makes total sense, right? So do you want to explain how it actually, not the mechanics so much, because people can watch that or study in our academy or there's lots of different ways to learn this.
Handshake
do you want to
interrupt
explain
interrupts
how
their
it
pattern.
actually works from a brain mechanism?
Yeah, we run totes, which are test, operate, test, exit. Micro programs in our brain. We use the example, opening a door. You test. This is a doorknob, yes. Operate, go through the door. Have I gone through the door? You test, exit. Yeah, and it's over. The tote's over. Your brain stops running the program.
It was poorly
Anything
explained.
you do habitually, huh?
It was really poorly explained.
It was. But
You're rushing.
I know, I'm rushing because you've told me not to take too long. We're already out of time.
I know. I don't care.
Anyway, the bottom line is
Nothing
you're
is gonna happen.
interrupting the person in the middle of something that they do habitually.
And so they normally test, they have a process that they run unconsciously in their brain.
Yeah.
They test that this is the process that they're going to run. They operate the process. They test that it has operated successfully,
and then they
i.e. your
exit
doorknob analogy, and then they exit the program. And a handshake is such a toad, and so if you interrupt it in the middle,
the brain scrambles and looks for resolution. You get a Zeigarnik effect. And so if you jump in when the person's looking for resolution, I mean, what's the middle of a handshake? How do you end it? You shake hands. And if the person isn't able to do that, their brain scrambles and they will tend to take whatever direction you give them at that moment to bring resolution.
Provided.
Was that slow enough?
Yes. Provided there
Very
is
kinesthetic.
rapport.
It must be rapport, or you won't stay there.
So imagine if you were to, everyone who knows the handshake interrupt, or if you don't, we'll just explain very briefly that you, with the proper setup, etc., you would go to shake someone's hand, you would use your other hand, hold it up to their face, and give them clear instructions on what to do.
Focus their
Stare
eyes.
at your hands and notice the changing focus of your eyes as that hand moves towards your face, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different lingo that you can use. You've interrupted the pattern in the middle, provided you have rapport, or at least there is the possibility to build rapport and not like anti-rapport.
Exactly.
It's not going to work if you are somebody's mortal enemy and you walk up to them and you go, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and you put your hand out and then you interrupt it. They're going to punch you in the face or something.
They can try.
Yeah.
Now, the Mandel triangle makes this work, of course. You have to be congruent. You have to be confident when you're doing it. You have to have intention behind it. It's not this offhand Jamie kind of thing. It's done properly.
Yeah.
Notice I didn't say the rest.
Yes, of course. I recognize
But Sean
that.
Michael Andrews, our good friend, the world's fastest hypnotist.
Did a really good tip.
He gave the great tip, which is to practice this, do it on someone who's already in trance in your office.
Yeah, it's a
so
great
you can
thing.
get the feeling down and practice it. Our students at Architecture of Hypnosis had a blast. They broke into groups of 5 with some resource people, and one person would do it on 4 people in a row, and then the others would do it on 4 in a row.
Yeah, you just go down the line and practice the mechanics and the patter of what you want to say to get the process going, because you do require some fluidity of motion, some economy of motion, and the right starting language.
Brilliant.
Just to get the process started. They would practice this on each other. But when you demonstrated it in the front of the class, one of our students said, "You mean you can do this when the person knows that it's coming?" Yes, of course you can, because you're not instructing them exactly when it's going to happen. Just like an instant induction based upon a PGO spike.
Yeah, you don't go,
Can work on someone who knows
"And?"
it's coming because they don't know when the PGO spike
They don't
is going to be
exactly know
fired.
when.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't go,
yeah.
and sleep. Yeah, don't do that when you're doing instant inductions. It makes you seem weak and not very skilled.
Stupid. Now, one more quick thing we'll give you as a hint here. I came up years ago with hand delevitation, and notice how I've taken the pace way down.
Yeah. Oh, but before you do this, let me just close out on the Sean Michael Andrews tip, because when he says practice it on someone who's your client, what he actually said was something along the lines of this. Let's say you've hypnotized a client. They're in trance. What you can now do with really just for your own benefit and practice is, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, and when you do, I'll go to shake your hand and you will go to shake mine. Open your eyes now. Hi, how are you doing? And then you just take the person's hand
Into the handshake
right back.
interrupt.
You treat it like a fractionation, essentially. But you
Sure.
get to practice the mechanics in a situation where there's essentially a guaranteed success because the person's already hypnotized.
Already hypnotized.
Great
Beautiful,
way to
beautiful.
practice.
That's nice. I didn't know that when I used to initially work with
Yeah,
this. but
that's why
it's
we
a
always
great
credit
addition.
the people who
we
teach
get it
us
from.
awesome stuff.
And
So, hand delevitation.
Let's just hand you this as an interesting ending for you. A great induction I came up with many years ago. People were struggling, attempting to do the Erickson hand levitation, where your hand is rising, it's getting, and you're focusing on it, and it takes minutes, and finally it touches your face, your eyes close, your hand drops, you go into trance. It's hard to get. You're working against gravity. And it'll work if you say rest your hand on your leg or on the table as lightly as possible. You've already got a bit of catalepsy
Never
happening.
pre-frame
Telling them
relaxation.
to relax. Why would you want to be
hand.
relaxed when you're trying to get the hand to float?
That's the classic mistake when you want catalepsy.
But beyond that, do the delevitation instead. Let gravity work for you. Start with their hand
Set it
up.
up,
Tell them it's
cataleptic.
getting heavy and that it's sinking down. And as it does, they can watch it and their eyes can close and go into trance. To which point, we have our empowering question, and we're not going to be able to end on time, buddy.
No, well, that's fine. No big deal.
So
Nothing
go to
bad
the
will happen.
empowering question, Chris
If I
Thompson.
can find it. Okay, here we go. Ask yourself, which of these cool techniques will I take the time to practice so I can master yet another aspect of hypnosis and get really good at this stuff starting right now?
Excellent. I have a very quick MetaFIVE, which is one better than a metaphor. Again, the best ones are drawn from your own life. This is one you've never heard, Chris. It's called Kenny and the Secret Panel.
Okay.
When we were kids in public school, this really risque magazine was on the market. It was called Playboy. And it was extremely risque. I mean, so absolutely inoffensive compared to what you can imagine is available today, online or magazines or whatever. But when you're a 12-year-old boy seeing bare-breasted women, it was just, wow, it was amazing. But gaining access to these magazines was difficult. You typically had to have a friend. You couldn't buy them. You had to have a friend whose father had
Gaining
some
access.
and convince him to borrow one or steal one or something, which is exactly what happened with my friend Brian. And he had access to one, but he had to hide it. He lived in a house with 3 sisters and a brother. So there were 5 kids in this bungalow. And I said, it's not a problem. You design a secret panel and you keep it there. I don't know what you mean. I said, I'll show you. So I went to his place. We got a shoebox. Took the lid off. I cut a slit out of the front, or a piece out of the front. We got some tape. And his dresser was low to the ground. And we put it underneath and taped it underneath the dresser.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And we cut it to the size so you could roll up the Playboy magazine and enjoy it whenever you wanted. And do whatever it led you to do. And just put it in this thing, the secret panel, and we're just enjoyment boys. Look at this. Isn't this brilliant? He's eternally thankful to me. Now he can practice a brand new hobby with no interference. So he's got this thing there half an hour after he's done it. his younger brother, Kenny, for some reason, is crawling on his hands and knees in Brian's bedroom. What's this? Rips the panel down with a Playboy magazine, takes it into the kitchen to show his mom. Half an hour later, you can't make this stuff up.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Brain Software Podcast. That was a very interesting ending to episode 216. I'm Chris Thompson. This is Mike Mandel, and I just hope that you have a great time listening to us tell insanely stupid stories sometimes about hypnosis and sometimes offering you some good quality education.
Yes, exactly, yes.
I want to also just close out by saying, if you go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com right now, and no guarantee it'll be this way in the future, you can start a 14-day test drive of the Academy. It's completely free. You don't even need a credit card for the 14 days. So get going, and then you can decide at the end of that 14 days, yeah, I want to join, or you can say, no, these guys are ridiculous. I hate them. In which case, you're probably not listening to this podcast, so that would be somebody else, not you.
Right.
So get your free test drive, MikeMandelHypnosis.com, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks again, and good night.
Hey, Chris, I can make you laugh.
I bet you can.
So try not to smile.
Hold on.
You really get control
As
of
my
yourself
daughter would say,
here.
all right.
Beautiful. No smiling, nothing. I absolutely guarantee you're going to not only smile, but laugh. Here we go. Are you ready?
Do I have to look at you?
No, you can look at the
Okay.
camera. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice office, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Do you want to put in a secret panel? Thanks again. We're out of here.
That's just horrible.